I'm working on finishing up the scrapyard today. I'll try and get a close-up of that for you. I think that's coming along pretty well. You can see I've started refreshing my ballast. I haven't gotten much further than here. But also, I've installed some background buildings up against the backdrop. Got a section of fence in there that I'm just going to weather a little bit. It's just original white color right now. Little gate there. Some more buildings down the side. Another fence section, and the rest of the ones that I have so far printed out. You'll remember that some of these were behind my propane facility over here against the wall. I'm going to go ahead and put in my backdrop there in a little while. I don't have that one ready to go in yet, but anyway, I do have this remote switch here, so on off remote, so I'll be able to put my backdrop board right over the face of this. This just stays on all the time, and then I can cycle it on and off here. So working pretty well. So other than that, not much done at the moment, but I will be back shortly with some more stuff completed. I'm going to start with the installation of this backdrop along the wall where the light switch is. So I need to put in some blocking first to bring the backdrop off of the wall a bit so I can clear the light switch over there. And I do have my remote switch in there, so I think I showed this already, but anyway, it works pretty well. My backdrop is going to come to here. So I've got to put this first section in here. The 8-foot length comes to just beyond the light switch cover. So I'll get the blocking installed and then come back and talk some more about how this is going to work. So I've got the blocking installed around the light switch, and I think I'm going to do what I did over on the back wall, which was just nail the backdrop to the wall and then let it naturally curve up and over the window frame. I'm going to do that same process here where it's going to curve up and naturally over these blocking strips. The 8-foot piece ends about here, so once I get it up in here and nailed, I can put the backing strip on the edge so that I have something firm to connect with coming across the door here. So let's go ahead and get that done. Well, the backdrop is in. I can't say that I'm necessarily happy with this, but it is what it is, and I'll try and cover it up best I can. So let me just address the gap at the bottom of the backdrop there. I think you can see that fairly evidently. There's about a 3/4 of an inch gap between the top of the layout top and the bottom of the backdrop. And the reason for that is I cut these pieces of masonite by hand, trying to get a consistent 16-inch piece so I could get 3 strips out of an 8-foot wide piece of masonite. I did really well, apparently, on everything but this last piece over here. So don't know what happened there. But anyway, regardless, I can take care of the gap, not an issue. The part that is really frustrating here is over the door. I have that tacked in place on the right side. You can see it is a fairly noticeable gap. Excuse me. I don't really want to fill that in with anything. and anything being spackling, because I may have to remove that piece of backdrop at some point to get stuff into or out of the room. And what I'm going to do, it's tacked again, you know, just with some nails, but I'm going to put some screws, some small screws in on the right side, and just let that hold it in there. The left side is a compression fit up against the other backdrop, so I'm not going to need anything on the left side. I'm just going to put some screws in on the right side and then see what we can do here. What I can do and probably should do is take that piece out of there and just scribe the distance that it's off. And sorry about the pause in narrative here, but I'm trying to think what the best way to do this is. I think that's what I'm going to do is I'll put a line down where the backdrop, the long section of backdrop is, right now it's overlapping the short section. So I'll go ahead and scribe that, and then I'll cut that off. And I think that's going to be a much better approach than trying to make this fit. So let me get that done, and we'll be back. Well, it's in. Obviously some painting to do here at the seam. I was not paying attention to what I was doing when I cut the board. So that vertical black line that you see is the mark that the bottom of my skill saw made. I should have cut that from the back side, but you know, I didn't. So I'll have to repaint anyway. There are, you know, in the seam I've got to repaint in there. I've got the screws in, holding it up. You can probably see them. I think once they've been painted, they'll fairly well disappear into the backdrop. You know, I can also spray some clouds over the top and camouflage that pretty well. Again, the gap I'm not too concerned with. I can cover that up easily enough with scenery. Sorry about the rapid movement here on the camera. Over here in the corner, there is a slight gap at the bottom, but I have plans to put another building in there to come up over that gap. So that will take care of that piece over there. Back here, where I had the gap at the bottom, where the backdrop crosses the closet, I was able to just mount some buildings down in there, right up against the top of the layout, and it's covered that gap fairly well. So I'm happy with that. Still have scenery to put into the corner there to take care of that gap. I don't really know what I'm going to do back there yet. I have that water tower, which I think is either going to go right where it is or possibly across the tracks back in the corner. I think putting it across the tracks in the corner will allow me to work some scenery around it to help cover that gap. So that's probably what I'll do back in that area. Let's see, a couple of other things. I have some utility poles in here. Let me see if I can zoom in on those. You can see them going down the road there. These are ones that I had, gosh, I don't know how many layouts ago, but they've got light posts, not posts, but lights, street lights on them. So I thought that might be a good place for those. There's a five posts with lights, and then way back over in the corner, there is a utility pole with a couple of transformers on it. So that's what those are, if it's hard to tell in the video. I don't know if I'm going to string wires between the poles. You know, down the road I might, but there's just too much reaching still going on with scenery and such that I think I would probably just ruin everything. But eventually, you know, I can put some wires from the poles that have the transformers on them down into the factory over there. So who knows, maybe in about 20 years I'll be doing that. But anyway, I think that's about it for this month's update. I struggled with these buildings on the backdrop here. I had bought some of this Eileen's tacky spray, which I thought would be perfect for this. It's not perfect. In fact, it was awful, which really surprised me because the tacky glue, if you've ever used that stuff, is just exactly what it says. It's tacky and it sticks right now. Um, one issue I had with these buildings is they were on foam core. I sprayed the back of the buildings and also the backdrop itself. Let me zoom back out. Oops, sorry. Zoom back out here. Sprayed the backs of the buildings and also the backdrop with the tacky spray. And it says immediate tack. I, I don't know. It doesn't work on foam core because what it did is it actually shrunk the foam core as it dried and it caused my buildings to kind of bow out. So what I had to do was peel the black paper backing off of the foam core to expose the white foam core, and then I just use regular old Eileen's tacky glue, which is this stuff right here, to glue them up there. So that worked pretty well. So another thing that I plan on doing with these, I've got the last building gluing up right there. Another thing I plan to do with these is I'm going to try and maybe put some taller buildings directly on the backdrop behind there to give the impression that there's a city behind the industrial area here. So I don't know what I can find for that, but that's kind of maybe a long range plan. But for now, I think I'm pretty much done with this. I'm going to have to repaint that, obviously, and then we'll go on from there. Scrapyard. I haven't talked too much about it other than having it in here. So let me just talk a bit about this. I made a sign there called Riley's Scrap and Salvage. That was my dad's name, and he was one of those guys, from the greatest generation who was always making stuff by himself because he knew he could make it better than anyone else who might have already manufactured it. So there was a place in my hometown that was kind of a scrap and salvage place that sold pretty much anything you could ever imagine. And he was always headed down there when he had a project in mind to find materials. So, and he was Irish, proud of it. So that's the reason for the shamrock there. But anyway, so that's the scrapyard. I do have the one gondola in there right now, and I did weather it a bit, and I'm not big on weathering. Some guys are, some guys aren't. I can take it or leave it. If you like weathering, more power to you. I just thought that a brand new looking gondola in a scrapyard probably wasn't, the best representation of reality. So I did have some paint that looked pretty much like rust, and I just kind of used a makeup sponge to blob it on there to rust that up a bit. I've got a couple of, sorry about the shadow. I've got a couple of dumpsters in there. The one you can see has some crap in it. The other one is empty, and again, use that same rust-colored paint to kind of mess up the interior of that. Got a little guy with a forklift, his supervisor standing there by the door in his pickup truck. And then I've got some other scrap that is just kind of sitting in front of the dock there. So, I think this area is pretty well done is basically what I'm trying to say. So enough about the scrapyard. So over here on the peninsula where the lumber yard is, just scanning down through here, a lot of the buildings are not where they're going to be permanently. I have a lot of stuff in the lumber yard. Be that as it may, I had a thought about putting a view block in right over at the far side of the peninsula, just stacking a piece of my masonite backdrop board in there and running it down the peninsula and behind the town over here. And the reason for that is that I would like the lumber yard to appear that it is out in the woods somewhere, out in the forest. At least, you know, there there shouldn't be a town over there, is what I'm trying to say, this close to the lumber yard. So I have one last piece of masonite left that it's 8 feet long, and the peninsula on that far side, from the end of the peninsula down to where that 90-degree connection is there, where the light switches are mounted. That's 6 feet there. So I would have another 2 feet to come down, which would probably hit about where that blue two-story house is. And then I do have another short piece that I could tack on the end. So I'm thinking about doing that because it would solve a couple of problems that at least I think I have. Is on the far side of the backdrop, I could put, another town scene there with maybe some retail and that kind of stuff, on the front side to look like there's a reason for the town residential area being here. Also, when you're on the other side of the layout over there, there would be a backdrop behind the buildings that could have either additional residential areas on it, or it could have, maybe some open fields and maybe some trees, just whatever, to kind of break up, somebody's backyard being right inside the lumber yard over here. So let me know what you think about that. The only problem I have is I could make the backdrop stand up. That's not an issue because where the fascia meets the table over there, I have a gap, probably a 1/4 of an inch gap between the inside of the fascia and the cork. So, I could definitely slide a piece of masonite down in there. The only issue is over here, I'd have to mount it somehow. Piece of wood, vertical piece of wood, or, maybe some wood that is attached to the layout that runs, parallel to the backdrop. And I could either nail or screw into that, just to keep it vertical. And then, I'm going to have another splice in here as well. I think it would, it'd look kind of neat maybe, having the division there, because what I could do, and I think I have enough, sorry, I'm designing as I'm talking. I could come down and kind of curve around the gas station and go across the tracks with a backdrop and put a tunnel portal on either side of that, kind of making like there's a mountain there. From the other side, I don't know what I'd do, but anyway, so lots of options. Let me know what you think about the view block. I had talked about doing that on the last layout, where I had that huge long peninsula, and I was going to put a view block in there, but I never did. But anyway, so I'm rambling. Let me know what you think, and I appreciate all the input.